Hey, everybody. I'm Erik Bohlin. I am a professional counselor, and I am revisiting a video that I made called The Artery. I found it really useful in any kind of recovery, whether you're addicted to drugs, alcohol, food, spending, sex, gambling, work addiction, or any kind of compulsive behavior. I find this as a useful model just in general. It originates from the 12 steps, but I've done it pictorially here to kind of show you kind of how I think in terms of it's not even how I think, it's how I have seen the program. I want to give credit where credit is due. So originally I heard this from Wally P., who then described how Mexico AA had created this metaphor of the tunnel. I've kind of revamped it into an artery, which has to do with blood supply, that I need blood to stay alive, and I need God's grace to stay alive. So here's how it works. I am a tiny little person there, okay? So you can see me. I'm tiny, and that's significant because when we're tiny in relationship with God, when we are humble, we're going to be okay. If I start to get self-inflated and start to crowd God out, it doesn't work so well. And so this inflated sense of self, like this could be me analyzing my problems, worrying about my problems, trying to figure out my problems, trying to fix my problems, trying to fix my addiction. I'm getting frustrated with my addiction. I'm self. I'm going to come up with answers, trigger management. I'll do this and that. And some of that's okay, but we have to be so careful that I'm not trying to fix things myself. Resentments, they say in the AA book, are the number one offender. So it's a manifestation of self, in that I can't let go of something that really bad happened to me. I'm mad. I just can't handle that. You can see that I start to get bigger and God gets smaller. Not that God's actually getting smaller, but in my sense of inflated self and resentments, I'm getting bigger. And it's about me. I'm becoming a big deal. Ego stands for edging God out. Fear, I start to want what I want. I'm afraid, what if I don't get what I want? What if this happens? And what if that happens? And what if I don't get sober? What if this person doesn't like me? What if there's not enough money? Goes on and on and on and on. And so self will running riot. So it's where I'm starting to control and direct the whole show, as described in the AA Big Book, that I have a script for the world and I want the world to be the way I want it to be. And so I'm going to try to worry and not have bad things happen. I start to have a dishonesty, and there's obviously lies. If I start keeping secrets, if I try to look better than I am, if I've harmed people, but I'm just not going to apologize because I don't want to look bad, I have to humble myself and acknowledge that I'm powerless over all this stuff, okay? And just more and more dishonesty, okay? So when I come to the program, there's all this mess. I'm at the bottom. I can't, it's blocking me from God's power and His love. And so there's a certain sense. Step one is for me to admit I'm powerless over this. Step two is to believe that God is there to help me. And three is to stop running the whole show, to start to let Him direct and not myself. Well, if I go on and on and on like this, I'm actually now harming others. I'm going beyond this artery. I'm starting to just be really tough with people, and I don't even know that I'm harming them. That's the thing with the 12-step process. We look at ourselves. So, on page 64, it says, making the decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God. It may have a vital effect. It will have some kind of bring life into the situation, but it won't stay with us. It'll have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and to be rid of the things in ourselves which have been blocking us. Okay. So these are the things that are blocking us: the harms to others, the selfishness, the fear, dishonesty, and resentments. Some have said that the resentment, fear, selfish, and dishonest are like the four apocalyptic horsemen. Step 4, 5, 6, and 7 are identifying all this mess. 8 and 9 are making a list of the people we've harmed. Okay. So as we start to look at our defects and ask God to remove them, we start to have more and more removed, and we start to feel this flow of God's love for us, this God's power coming to us. And this is steps 4, 5, 6, 7. And I prefer to do that in an afternoon. People would go, well, that's awfully fast. Well, actually, no, people are doing it quite slow. And then I made a list when I was doing my resentments. And really, I have people that I've harmed, and I need to decide how am I going to make those amends. You can look at step 8 and 9 specifically how to do mends, but we mend the relationships with others, and we go to them and we start to say, you know what, I was wrong. Please forgive me. I'm trying to do right and clean up my past. This is very humbling, and it opens up God's power and his love for us. If there's someone I'm not going to make an amends to, and I'm not going to make it right, it kind of blocks my relationship with God right then and there. For those that have a Christian background, Jesus says, if you have aught against someone, meaning a grudge against someone, or that they're upset with you, go to them and be reconciled. And eventually, this is kind of a perfect event, but this is where I am, and I then have my morning and evening prayers in steps 10 and 11. I have now power to stay sober. We call it God's grace to stay sober. So a 12-stepper says, I am sober by God's grace 10 days, or by God's grace, I'm sober 10 weeks or 10 months or 10 years. It's by God's power that I can do anything. I can't make God's power come to me, but I can attract it. I do this through praying in the morning and praying in evening. When I am wrong, admit it quickly and apologize. Sometimes we do this in person. Sometimes we do this through prayer or indirect means. But we do it. We don't shrink back. And then meetings and phone calls are helpful, but they're not the same as making that connection with God and making connection with others. And then a gratitude, being thankful, very helpful. Say like, I start to get God's guidance. I start to ask, God for guidance here and there, and we end up having guidance gifted to us. I have this slide connected to another concept, but assuming that I'm just doing one day at a time, praying and asking God for guidance, I'm checking it in with those around me to make sure that I'm not going off into a strange, thinking I'm doing God's will when I'm not, when I'm just being self-directed. So this is the beginning of the problem, or the beginning of when we start to slip. We start to not be able to do prayer and meditation. We get really busy. It's kind of like a nemesis. We start to sorry about that. We start to, I'll do this. We start to not have time to make amends, or we put them off. Meetings might be less and less. Meetings help keep us focused on a program, focused on God, to have fellowship where fellow people are doing the same things. We begin to notice lack of power, lack of love and peace. We start to get not emotionally sober. We start to lose emotional sobriety. And there's me. And then I start to get more me oriented. Without knowing it, often I start getting self directed, self powered, self focused, self willed. So, self directed means I kind of want to do what I want to do, and I'm going to do this rather than let God tell me what His will for my life and the power to carry it out. That's step 11. Powered is where I'm starting to go inflated and think I have a battery pack of self will strapped on my back. Doesn't work that way. I have to actually have like an electrical or a power cord to God, and that cord is prayer. I know it's a simple metaphor. And then self-focused. I start to see things just through my lens instead of what's good for others and what does God want. And then willpower. I start to get self-willed. Well, I start to build up plaque. The power starts to begin to wane, and without knowing it, I'm being kind of self-guidance. I start to get to fear driven. I might get a little bit of resentment or selfishness. I might have a little harm I did to someone or big harm. But in my mind, in this state, I'm kind of perceiving that I'm okay. I still have a program. I'm going to meetings, making phone calls, but I'm not okay. As soon as I stop doing step 10 and 11, I'm in trouble. Yeah, the artery will get clogged. I start to get disconnected from God. And if I stay in this state, I will lose sobriety. But I can have a loving sponsor who says, come on now, let's get to praying again. Or God Himself draws me back to Him through conviction and painful feelings. And so I'm just a prayer away from being back in the program. I like this phrase, just a prayer away. Just pray and just ask God for connection, for forgiveness, for direction. I may be a phone call away or a email or text away, or better in person. If I've harmed people, there's plenty of meetings really now with Zoom. I mean, it's good to go to in-person meetings, but in the olden days when people were in the middle of a state where there was no meetings, they can actually now find a meeting online. And phone calls have been there for a long time. And gratitude. So this is my short video on how this all works. I hope you find yourself moving towards God, moving towards the solution rather than staying stuck in the problem. You take care. We welcome comments or questions, as this is what generates us to know what to do next. Well, we actually pray and ask God's will and direction for that. You take care. Have a good day.